A vote in Parliament in favour of banning the IRGC wasn't enough to convince the Prime Minister to list it as a terrorist organization 6 years ago. The organization killing 55 Canadians in an unprovoked attack on a passenger aircraft wasn't enough to make him do it. Even its role in the October 7th attack and its subsequent role in inciting hatred on our streets was not enough. It took a by-election for the Prime Minister to change his mind. Why is the Prime Minister always putting his political security above national security?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, today we've listed the IRGC as a terrorist entity. This sends a strong message to Canada.
Finally, after the Conservatives have been asking for like 6 years.
To hold the Iranian regime to account.
Look at them clapping about this
No
now.
impunity for Iran's disregard of human rights and its support of terrorism. This is yet another of the extremely strong measures we've taken against the Iranian regime, some of the strongest measures in the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister was also forced to release data from his own government showing that there would be a $30 billion a year hit to our economy as a result of his job-killing carbon tax, data that he had up until then been hiding. He's been going around claiming that Canadians are better off because they pay this tax. Did the calculations that went into his 8 out of 10 talking points include this $30 billion a year cost to the Canadian economy and to Canadian families?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that 8 out of 10 Canadians in jurisdictions that have the federal carbon price in them get more money back from the Canada carbon rebate than they pay with this price on pollution. That is fact. Now, the Conservative leader has been using erroneous figures that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said he made a mistake on to continue to attack our plan on fighting climate change and putting more money back in people's pockets. 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off, Mr. Speaker.
You should be allowed to lie in Parliament. Like, that's fully misleading Canadians. That's not what the PBO said.
Does that include the $30 billion a year economic cost when distributed among those 8 out of 10 families?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Conservatives are basing their attacks on climate action and affordability on erroneous calculations that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has admitted that he made. The fact that the Parliamentary Budget Officer also calculated without making any mistakes that 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off with the Canada carbon rebate and the price on pollution means that we are not only fighting climate change and bringing down emissions, we're also putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians who need support right now, money that the Conservative Party wants to take away.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I'm not using Parliamentary Budget Officer numbers. I'm using numbers that this Liberal government has now published. This government has admitted that their carbon tax will hit Canadians with $30 billion in annual losses to wages and higher prices. That is their data. They published it. So once again, a very specific question. When he claims that 8 out of 10 are better off, does that include the $30 billion of costs that he now admits that the government will impose on the economy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know how much clearer I can be, but I'll try. Based on everything this government knows, all the studies we've made, all the studies that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has made, we can affirm very clearly, and it's backed up by independent economists, that 8 out of 10 families in jurisdictions across the country where the federal price on pollution applies do better off with more money in their pockets than the price on pollution costs them with the Canada carbon rebate. It's putting more money in the pockets of Canadians and the Conservatives are wrong on this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He can't say yes, because he knows that when you take the $30 billion a year and divide it by the 17 million Canadian families, then you come up with almost $2,000 per Canadian family based on numbers published by his own government. So it's like him saying, you can afford this house as long as you don't take into consideration the down payment and the monthly mortgage payments. If you take out $30 billion of costs, you don't have a real calculation. So why doesn't he put the $30 billion back into the calculator and show Canadians whether they're really better off?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It is actually quite stunning to see the leader lay it out so clearly that all of his math depends on one factor that he believes, which is climate change isn't real, according to the Leader of the Opposition. That's the only way to make sure his math works. If he says there are no costs to Canadians of extreme weather events, there are no costs to Canadians about degrading competition when the world is switching towards greener solutions. If you don't believe in climate change, then his math works. But if you know that climate change is a real threat to Canadians and the economy, then we need to act, and that's what we're doing.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
No, all you have to accept is the fact that his carbon tax will not reduce by 1 penny the cost of climate change to Canadians. It will not eliminate one flood, one drought, one storm, one anything. His carbon tax literally does nothing to change the weather or the climate. What it does is makes Canadians poorer. So will he finally admit that all along he's been misleading Canadians, that he knew he had the data that Canadians pay more and get less and get screwed over by the carbon tax?
Here.
Encourage all members to try to find ways that for polite words in the House of Commons.
There's nothing unparliamentary about that.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, the only way the Conservative leader's math makes sense is when he believes that climate change has no cost for Canadians. Canadians right across this country are seeing the impact of climate events, the impact of the need to innovate and create greener, cleaner jobs for the future as we deliver our resources to the world. The fact that he doesn't believe in climate change means that he doesn't believe the climate action that puts more money in people's pockets is worth it. Well, that's exactly where we disagree, and we're going to continue to help Canadians get through this.
L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Now we have Bill 96 on French in Quebec, but American businesses are pressuring the Joe Biden government to try to get the U.S. to impose sanctions to undermine Quebec's language law. Will the Prime Minister stand up to the U.S.? Will the Prime Minister protect legislation that was legitimately adopted in Quebec? Or will he let our main trade partner dictate our language laws? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know that for years the Quebec government has had excellent representatives in Washington and elsewhere in the world to talk about issues around Quebec legislation. Then, meanwhile, we, as a bilingual country that protects French and English throughout the country, we will be there in our negotiations, including in the NAFTA renegotiation that we did several years ago with the American government. We will continue to protect Canada's culture and linguistic realities, as well as the special realities for our citizens throughout the country. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, this government seems to be allergic to the word yes. We know that we will not be able to offer French language training for immigrants. We know that unilingual public servants are being hired in Quebec. We know that there have been a number of other issues that undermine the French language in Quebec. There has been funding, in fact, to undermine Bill 96 right up to the Supreme Court. Does the Prime Minister understand that for Francophones elsewhere in Canada and North America, who we may be the only allies for, do they understand that this is the only way to preserve their future and it's doing the opposite? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know that the leader of the Bloc Québécois is always trying to pick fights. And I would remind him that we have more Quebecers in our Liberal caucus than he has in his caucus. We will always defend French, both in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada. We will be there. We will invest hundreds of thousands. We will invest hundreds of millions of dollars in the French language. We will offer French language for immigrants. We will continue to defend French throughout the country. And we will pay particular attention to Quebec because we know that Quebec must remain a place with the French language being in the first place, and we will always support it.